and we'll give folks a minute to log in. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We'll give folks just a minute to get logged in. And as it's 8:31, we will get underway. Good morning, everybody. We've still got folks logging in, but to get us started, on behalf of the 495 MetroWest Partnership, I want to thank you for joining us for this morning's session of our Energy and Sustainable Development Committee. My name is Jason Palich, and I have the honor of serving as Executive Director of the partnership. In just a moment, I'll be turning things over to our ESD Committee Co-Chair, Beth Wierling, for some words of welcome. But first, I'm going to go over some housekeeping items very briefly. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available for later broadcast and will be available also through the partnership's social media accounts as well as YouTube. So we've got a great group joining us in the audience today, but of course we're going to have a lot of viewers later on as well. All attendees are muted during today's session. During the Q&A portion of our panel discussion, we'll invite audience members to ask questions of our panelists by typing them into the chat function of the Zoom meeting today. I'll be moderating the Q&A portion of today's discussion by selecting questions from the chat and reading them aloud to our panelists. Please note, of course, that questions which are redundant, overly long, or disrespectful will not be asked. At a pre-pandemic meeting of the partnership's Energy and Sustainable Development Committee, we'd begin by having our audience members go around the room to introduce themselves. Obviously, we can't do that this morning, but in keeping with that spirit, at this time, we invite our guests this morning to utilize the chat function of the Zoom meeting to introduce yourself by typing your name, title, and organization so folks can get a sense of who is with us this morning. And I, of course, want to begin by acknowledging some special guests we have from the legislature. We're joined by State Representative Hannah Kane of the 11th Worcester District, as well as Susan Nickel, who is here on behalf of Senate President Karen Spilka. So I want to thank them for their attendance. Should you experience any technical problems during the session this morning, our immediate guidance is to log out and then try logging back in. Should you need further assistance, the partnership's Manager of Policy and Planning, Jeremy Thompson, is available to assist you and can be reached via email at jeremy@495partnership.org. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Beth Wierling of the Kraft Group, who serves as private sector co-chair of our Energy and Sustainable Development Committee. We'll offer some words of welcome and introduce our panelists. So turn it over to Beth.
Good morning, and welcome to our third discussion in our three-part series on the impact of COVID-19 on our region, brought to you by the 495 Partnerships Energy and Sustainable Development Committee, which focuses on issues related to land use, energy, brownfields remediation, low-impact development, broadband connectivity, placemaking, and environmental stewardship. Committee meetings and events are open to all interested participants. I'll introduce our panelists and then turn things over to Jason, who will moderate this morning's discussions. Panelists' introductions are in alphabetical order. First, Sergeant Ed Burman. Sergeant Ed Burman has led municipal COVID response to the town of Ashland. Sergeant Burman has been a registered nurse for 28 years and currently works part-time at the MetroWest Medical Center as an emergency room nurse and hospital supervisor. He served 20 years with the Framingham Police Department and has been in Ashland for the past 7 years in his current role as the administrative sergeant for the Ashland Police Department. When the pandemic struck, Sergeant Burman was assigned by Ashland Town Manager Mike Herbert to become the COVID-19 task force lead for the town. Bill Keegan. Bill Keegan is town manager of Foxborough and has served in that role for the past 7 years. He is a 37-year veteran of public administration and has served in several leadership roles as chief administrative officer, mostly in Massachusetts, except for a 5-year period with the city of Hollywood, Florida, where he served as the city's HR and labor relations director. He resides in Seekonk with his wife and has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Kristen Lass. Kristen Lass is the Shrewsbury Assistant Town Manager and has held this position since 2015. She previously served as the Planning Director for the town of Shrewsbury and was also land use consultant with Beals and Thomas Inc. Ms. Last serves on the Board of Directors for the 495 Partnership and is currently the Public Sector Co-Chair. She is also the Public Sector Co-Chair of the Energy Sustainability Committee. Ms. Last also served on the MMA's Women Leading Government Committee. John Mangiaratti. John Mangiaratti is the Acton Town Manager and has held this position since 2018. He previously served as the Deputy Town Manager in Andover and the Assistant Town Manager in Westford. Mr. Mangiaratti serves on the Board of Directors for the 495 MetroWest Partnership, on the Executive Board of the Massachusetts Municipal Management Association, and as the co-chair of the MMA Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. He is also a member of the Board of Directors for the Greater Lowell YMCA. Louise Miller. Louise Miller started her career as a lawyer in Boston, focusing on commercial and environmental litigation. She switched to administrative government work 15 years ago. Louise has been the town administrator in Wayland since 2018. Prior to joining Wayland, Louise was the budget manager for Massachusetts Water Resource Authority. And prior to that, Louise served in various capacities in the city of Medford, including Chief Procurement Officer, Budget Director, and Personnel Director. So thank you to all of our panelists for participating today. And with that, I will turn over to Jason, who will begin our discussion. Jason?
Thank you, Beth. And with that, at this time, we're going to go through our panelists and ask them just to offer a few words about their overall approach to COVID-19. We'll stick with alphabetical order, and we'll start with Sergeant Burman from the town of Ashland. So take it away, Sergeant.
Great, I get to go first. When COVID originally came about in March, things were very disorganized throughout the state and pretty much the country. And our town manager really felt the need for there to be one central focal point for the town for everybody to kind of be able to get information from, so that all the information was correct coming across to all the different entities within the town, whether it was our businesses, our nursing homes, our staff. And the way we focused this was, I think the best approach to how we came up with this was everybody could come to one person, and then that one person would be able to find the information and get the information out correctly. One of the things that I'm really proud of that we did here in Ashland was we actually went out to all of our businesses and did COVID education with them. And that actually really was significant because, first of all, it was an outreach from the town. And then now all of our businesses had the person that they could contact, for example, if they had a positive COVID case in their business. And then we just kept expanding on that. We worked with our nursing homes to have almost daily communication with them to give them guidance and help them seek additional resources. We've also started our own testing program for town employees, whether they feel they were exposed or they were symptomatic. We actually are doing PCR testing along with antigen testing. And of course, word gets out. So we've actually been able to assist other towns around us, for example, Wayland, Hopkinton, Holliston, and Natick especially, with some testing for some issues that they've had amongst their employees. And I'm sure people have questions about that as we go on. Kind of in a nutshell, that's what we're doing here in Ashland.
Well, thank you, Sergeant. We'll go next to Bill Keegan in the town of Foxborough. Take it away, Bill.
All right, good morning, everyone. And I think we probably had the approach when COVID first hit was really to sort of organize our efforts first right out of the gate. And so we created a task force in town made up of our fire, police, public health director, assistant town manager, and all the key and some key board members as well, just to kind of get ourselves situated as to how we were going to approach this. We had the advantage in Foxborough in that we had gone to community paramedicine this past year. And I don't think we could have timed it any better in how that worked out. The person that we hired, a fellow by the name of Tom Kenvin, was our deputy fire chief, which we snatched away from Sharon as our director of paramedicine here in the town of Foxborough. We couldn't have picked a better guy for that because he really was so knowledgeable. He's also a registered nurse, and so he was able to sort of pick up that ball and run with it, and sort of help coordinate all our efforts to try and make us provide our community a very coordinated effort. What was particularly interesting was that we were one of the first fire departments in the state to do testing. So we were actually doing testing of other fire departments and of other communities whenever asked to do that. We were able to provide that level of service. And also we're one of the first communities in the state to actually do vaccinations. We actually have recently acquired some vaccines, and we've been going around and vaccinating seniors at their in their actual homes. I don't know if anybody else has been doing that. So we had a very high level approach, but we also were one of the first communities to come back to work. We actually closed the building back in March, and we were down to appointment only because I know that there was a lot of concern about how we were going about the transfer of the virus to people throughout the community and certainly to our employees. We wanted to take a very guided approach towards doing that. So we took the time during March, April, and May and June to really sort of figure that out. Actually, most people just worked from home. We created a whole bunch of new policies that we put into place, and our employees and unions were all very cooperative in making that happen. We created we took a lot of people took home laptops and worked from home and worked very well. We didn't really miss a beat in terms of our service to the community. Even throughout that period of time, a lot of people still worked here in Town Hall. Now we had the advantage that we built a new Town Hall about 3 or 4 years ago. And the advantage was that the rooms were pretty well spaced out. So we didn't have to do a lot of moving of space, of desks and things of that nature to create safe distances between employees. So I think we had a big advantage in that right out of the gate. And then July, the week after July 4th weekend, we actually all came back to work. We created policies where DPW workers would only work one person per truck. And then that way we kept everybody pretty safe. Everything was cleaned on a regular basis. Our offices were all cleaned on a night-by-night basis, sanitized, etc. So we were able to get people back to work. And I do think that's been an advantage. I think health-wise, mental health-wise, I think it's been a real advantage for our employees. And I think it's been difficult for other communities to actually try and get people back to work now, given those circumstances. So I think that's been a plus. I think our approach so far has been very positive for the community. The community has really been appreciative of the fact that we've really haven't missed a beat in terms of how we've handled our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. And we'll go next to Kristen Last from the town of Shrewsbury.
Good morning, everyone. When I was preparing for this session, I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I could probably go on for 3 hours of our preparations and where we are in Shrewsbury, but I will start with a short story. In late February, early March, myself and the town manager were in our budget hearings with the finance committee 2 Saturdays, and we had up the Johns Hopkins map showing the growing cases in China and then Italy and then some of the other countries around the countries around the world, and just seeing that vast expansion of the cases, we really never thought that we would be experiencing what we're experiencing today related to COVID. We were dealing with questions from an employee whose daughter was studying abroad in Italy, and should she come home? And if she came home, what would quarantine look like? And what was quarantine? We didn't even really know what that meant back in February and March. And it was really uncharted territory. And then, the date of March 13th really just sticks in my head, where our town manager was out on a leave that he couldn't come back to town hall for, and I held an all department head meeting in town hall. There was probably 20 of us in a room, not socially distanced, but figuring out what are we going to do for the next 2 weeks when we have to shut down. And literally most of us thought, this is just going to be 2 to 4 weeks. We're going to go away. We'll be back in town hall in April, and things will be back to normal. And you know, in hindsight, we look back and that's definitely totally different here in February of 2021. But we took a little bit of a different approach, a very conservative approach. We closed our town hall to town business on March 17th. We split our staff into 2 groups, Group A and Group B, both at the town hall staff level and the DPW level. We just wanted to make sure that we had that continuity of operations, that if something happened to the town manager, I was available, and likewise. So I'm really impressed with our IT department. Was able to get most people staffed up with laptops at home, second screens, those types of things. You know, we never thought that municipal employees could work from home. You know, that just wasn't the mindset. We needed to be there for our residents. We needed to serve them in person. And I think that mindset has really shifted in municipal government, which a lot of things we did very quickly, but I think a lot of things will stick. There may be some employees that we can allow work from home under certain circumstances, or if there is a need for childcare or parental care or whatnot. And one thing that really surprised me was that we didn't receive a lot of pushback from the public. We didn't open for appointments only until July. And really the only counter that wanted appointments, or that people wanted appointments, was the town clerk's office to get marriage licenses, notaries and the like. All of the other departments really shifted to a lot of online and phone calls, and we had a Dropbox for bills and mail. And that really worked very well. And we actually closed again, having no appointments when the surge started back in November of 2020. So we don't know when we're going to open back up to the public, even by appointments only. We also opened a little bit more in the summer for more employees to come into the building, but locked that down a little bit more in November, just to keep safety and separation of employees. The other funny story was we never knew how to video chat. You know, we always had in-person meetings and we're traveling places. The town of Shrewsbury uses the Google platform. So we all had to learn how to use Google Meets, which we never knew. We never knew of Zoom, never knew of Google Meets. Maybe some people did, but I was in a little bit of a hole, and that was a learning pattern. But we quickly pivoted to online meetings, which have worked very well. The Board of Selectmen held their first Google Meets Board of Selectmen meeting on March 24th, and we haven't looked back. We have guidance for all of our boards and commissions to follow that. We never had to use the state executive order to cancel or postpone any land use board meetings. As a matter of fact, our zoning board of appeals and planning board have been as busy as ever. Many homeowners are at home doing projects that need relief or need permitting there, and our building and planning departments have not stepped a beat. We actually use an online permitting system that we had before COVID, and that has really been our saving grace, that allows for our residents and contractors to apply for building permits and other permits online, and our staff to safely review that either in the office or at home. So we're really proud of that system. The last thing I wanted to mention within my 5 minutes is that the town of Shrewsbury belongs to the Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance. So we do not have a Shrewsbury Public Health Department per se. We share our services with the city of Worcester and 6 surrounding communities. And we believe that we have gained a lot from that alliance in terms of the knowledge of that public health department and the public health nursing services that are brought to the town of Shrewsbury, as well as the collaboration with the 6 other communities, that we're all on the same page doing the same thing and have really a unified message throughout the region. You know, we're running into some questions from our residents of, why do we have to go to the Worcester Senior Center to get our vaccines? Why can't Shrewsbury host a vaccination site? It's not out of the question that Shrewsbury could host a vaccination site, but right now the Worcester group has a very well-oiled machine and is running their program very well. We know that seniors and other residents are very scared and nervous about leaving their community or going someplace new or traveling. So now we're in the navigation phase of how do we get the vaccination out to our residents? How do we let them know that going to other locations that are not in Shrewsbury is okay, but also letting them know that we're working as hard as possible with our task force and emergency management director on how we can serve our population the best possible. So again, I could go on and on, but I'll turn it over to the next panelist and look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Kristen. And we'll go next to John Mangiaratti from the town of Acton.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Nice to hear from my colleagues on the panel. I think a lot of experiences we've had here in Acton are very similar. We closed our town hall on March 13th and all of our public buildings, and we haven't opened them yet. And we haven't had any complaints really from the public, which has been interesting. I was always wary of someone saying, "Can I work from home for a few days?" And now I realize it's not a big deal, because when you're working at home, you actually work more, in my experience. So from a productivity standpoint, I think we can all get over that, which is nice. The private sector was probably there 15 years ago, but I think we're catching up, and this COVID pandemic helped us get there. But so when we closed the buildings, we had to really change a lot of things. Overnight, we became virtual workers, telecommuters. All of our meetings became virtual. That was really, I think, a great thing, is that people can participate in meetings now. Usually, if you wanted to go to the Historic Commission and the Zoning Board, you'd have to get a babysitter and figure out all kinds of things. Now you can just log onto your computer. So access to government has greatly been enhanced through this pandemic, which is a unique and interesting benefit to this horrible pandemic. But so as we closed the building and we tried to sort out our reactions and our responses, we held weekly meetings with the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health. We had a workforce internally that met daily. We realized that since we were all learning every day what was happening, our residents were probably one step behind. So communication was key. So we rolled out a bunch of communication things. We did daily updates on our website. We activated our FM radio station, which normally had been playing grunge rock that the IT guys like. We actually started using it for communications and putting out daily messages and recording programs and putting them out. We established a hotline that people could call anytime and get a recorded message, and during most other times get a live person, which was very successful. We're going to keep that. We hosted a weekly radio and TV show just to give people information and connect with people, since people are all locked in their houses for months at a time. Those things will all continue. Since we never opened town hall, we also had to figure out a way to provide service to the public. So we set up patio furniture outside. When it started getting colder, we started a takeout window service for our departments. So we kept innovating. Every season, we find new ways to provide services to the public. And so I'm really proud of how our community reacted to this. When it comes to the business community, we've taken many steps to try to help our businesses. We've tried, social media campaigns. We gave them grants. We actually had town meeting approve small business grants, I was very surprised with how much support we had for it. It was nice to see. We got some funding from the state to do some more grants, some micro enterprise loans to some small businesses, and some childcare subsidies to help families get back to work. One thing that I think was really interesting is, as a town, is you have to run an election. And this year we ran a pretty big election. And normally you have all kinds of seniors that are volunteering to be election workers. And this year, they all said, "No, I'm not coming. No way." So we had to figure out how to run a huge election, actually a few elections during the pandemic, but a huge one. And we actually used town staff. And it was great. We all loved it. I mean, I was there. We had people from all over the departments, police, fire, everybody filled in for all the election workers. So we kept doing interesting things. And I think we really grew as an organization, despite all the negative things happening out there as a result of this. So throughout that, we continue to find ways to help educate our businesses, our residents. And now, right now, we're really focused on vaccines. So Acton's unique because we have a public nursing agency. We have basically a visiting nursing association, but run by the town. So we have a handful of nurses ready to go. We have a paramedic program in our fire department. So we're well equipped to vaccinate the whole town. We're just having trouble getting supply. If any of you on this call has access to vaccines, please let me know, because we certainly are trying everything we can to get our hands on more. But it's been a challenging 11 months, but I like to focus on the positives, which there are many, and I'm really excited to continue talking about those with our colleagues here today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, John. And with that, last but certainly not least, it's very rare, I think, that the name Miller puts you in the last place of an alphabetical lineup, but we'll go to Louise Miller from the town of Wayland.
Thank you. A lot of what we did in Wayland really echoes what was done everywhere else. And for us, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of, and I call it an anniversary of when COVID was really a reality in Wayland. We had our first school closure February 27th, and it was related to that Biogen conference. And from that point forward, I think the health director and I have really worked nonstop. Neither she nor I have been able to take any time off, obviously. And we took a very centralized approach to our response to COVID. We created a task force like other towns. We have a population with just a little over 1/3 of the population are seniors, which creates special challenges all by itself. So the Council on Aging was very instrumental in our response to COVID. We did close the town building like others did and focused on which departments needed to maintain their town services. So we did prioritize Council on Aging, Health Department, IT, and deprioritize departments such as land use, except for emergency services at first. And we had particular challenges surrounding providing food to seniors and others in need of food. We started a food pantry at the town building, providing food for those who were not able to have food. Either they could not pick up or were laid off or had other difficulties. We're primarily a residential community. So we both didn't have the challenges so much of dealing with COVID related to commercial entities, but we also did not have the support of commercial entities. So we have to provide all the services ourselves. We set up with the police department a delivery service for seniors for their medications. And as we move forward into the spring, we then started reopening services. Remote did cause a number of challenges for us because of the population that we have. But we were able to, I think, overcome many of the remote challenges. What we also did see, like others, is an increase in construction activity. And that created a whole set of other challenges for us because our building department is very small, and in-home inspections were particularly difficult. So we are still seeing a backup with respect to construction. The summer was good. We set up outdoor offices for all of our departments. And we had picnic tables with plexiglass, and they were very, very busy. We have an open town meeting, and that was all by itself a really, really interesting challenge. In the spring of 2019, we had about 1,700 people attend our town meeting. And so we were not sure how many would attend or how we would set it up. We used the field at the high school to do our town meeting. We had a little bit of an abbreviated town meeting, but we had 400 town residents show up that day. It was actually quite a feat. It was a little bit like putting on a rock concert. That's how my DPW director analogized it. Summer programming, I think, that was kind of a good time for everyone. The numbers were a little down. We were able to restore something that looked like normalcy in the town. And then with the fall came the challenges of reopening the schools. We found it really challenging. It drew upon a lot of town services. The facilities department reports to me, as do the school nurses, their community health nurses. And so we had to provide a lot of resources to the schools to get them to reopen, and we continue to provide a lot of resources. I think now what we're seeing primarily is fatigue. Everyone is exhausted from having had to deal with COVID for this long. People are cranky, employees are cranky, childcare issues have not improved or haven't improved enough. We've seen a number of retirements that were earlier than anticipated, and health issues seem to have been aggravated by the situation. Now we're working on the vaccine, and I think we're seeing the challenges that are being reported between the state and local. We would be able to provide a lot more vaccine if it were, if we had the supply, but it seems to be maintained and being channeled at the state level. And that is a challenge, especially with the age group right now that's in the priority group, the 75 plus. We were completely flooded last week with questions about how are we going to sign up for the vaccine. But I think, we just keep looking forward, and I think we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully by the time spring comes, things will be better and moving along in a somewhat usual fashion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Louise, and thank you to our panelists for your opening remarks. And I'll remind audience members of our virtual audience at this time, if you have questions you want to ask the panelists, you're welcome to utilize the chat or Q&A function to type those in. But we've got a place to start, and I'll start with a question that's, I had told our panelists before we launched, we want to keep this conversational, but I'll start with a question that's good and loaded, and something that I know is very emotional for a lot of residents and also for folks who do work for municipal governments. And it's the note that Louise just ended on, which is vaccinations. Curious how your community is approaching vaccinations, whether that's procuring supplies for administration through municipal departments, working through outside partners. If you are dealing with actual vaccinations, what are some logistical issues you might be facing? If you are, or if you're not, what are some communications issues you might be facing? So let's start off with that very loaded topic. And I see Sergeant Burman with his hand up. We'll go to Ashland first.
Hi, everyone. So we were struggling like everybody else. We kept trying to do our survey every week and put in for vaccine, and we kept getting denied. Finally, I was able to reach somebody at DPH, and they told me we would be better off if we formed a partnership with other communities. So Ashland formed a partnership with Hopkinton, Westborough, Northborough, and Southborough. And today we are supposed to be receiving 975 doses of Pfizer. And Hopkinton will be hosting the first clinic for the 5 towns this Thursday and Friday. We've already started with Prep Mod, but the other thing that Ashland did, our town manager, we sent out a reverse 911 call on Saturday. And what we did was we put a link on our website for residents to be able to pick what category they are in. So we've created this list. We've already got close to 400 people on it with their category. So as we get vaccine in, we can do a notification directly to those residents and send them a link to sign up, hopefully as we continue to get more vaccine each week and host these clinics in cooperation with the 4 other communities that we've now partnered with. They kept telling us Ashland was too small. They didn't want to send us 100 doses, 200 doses. So by forming this partnership, I think it's really going to work, and hopefully Thursday goes well.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll go next to, I see Bill's hand up.
Well, it's a really good question to ask, Jason. So because the challenge we all face is that I think that we could all put together the possibility and the capability of giving the doses. And I mentioned earlier in my earlier remarks that we had been one of the first departments to actually start doing vaccinations, and we're well equipped to do that. We were fortunate enough in that we were able to get about 400 doses from one of our local ambulance providers that we work with up at Gillette, and that actually helped us get the program running. Prior to that, we had done a collaborative effort with several of the towns in the region to get doses for all our public safety folks, to get them vaccinated right out of the gate. And then, but the 400 people that we did right out of the gate for were our senior population and most vulnerable ones. And I was there when the first day they gave our doses, and literally there were people with tears in their eyes because they've anticipated this so long, that we've tried so hard to get this resolved. And finally we were able to do that for folks. And then we actually were able to, for a couple of days, we did the most senior members of our population, but then we actually moved out to the residents in their homes, the most vulnerable members of our population in their homes, to get them vaccinated. And I'll tell you, the stories that came back from that were just remarkable, and to the point where my Council on Aging Human Services Director was really quite emotional about the whole thing. He said he'd never seen anything quite extraordinary in his entire life. So, and the other thing that I wanted to mention too is that, and we have a great relationship with the Kraft group, and Beth knows this, that we work really well together on so many different fronts. And of course, Gillette is one of the biggest vaccination sites in the state. But that aside, I mean, we are going to try and continue to work together and try and do things for the local population as well. But right now, the focus is really on the general population at large. So on a regional basis, most people are getting vaccinated up at Gillette. So we're going to try and continue to work to try and acquire more vaccine for this from the state. And I think that's probably the biggest concern from us right now, is just the fact that it's just not available to us. And we think that we could probably do a better job in many ways for getting it out than the current system. That's the way it's working. But I do think that there's a lot of infrastructure already built into cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth that could actually do this on their own if in fact we had access to the vaccines themselves. So thank you.
And thank you, Bill. And I see more hands up, and I'm actually going to take this opportunity to mesh an audience question we've had into this. We have had an audience question regarding employees of municipalities and vaccination. The question was specific to requiring employees to show proof of vaccination, but I'm actually going to expand on that a little bit. If folks continuing to talk about vaccination also want to talk about how you're communicating with your staff about vaccination and opportunities to get vaccinated. So I saw Louise's hand up, and I'll put you right on the hot seat there.
So with respect to employees, so far we've had first responders and certain healthcare workers who are employed by the town who are eligible for the vaccine. What we did is we were proactive. We had set up for them where they could go to get the vaccine, and then sent them the link to the ProMed, or whatever it's called, the sign up. But so I think what we found was that people are very proactive themselves in terms of trying to sign up. So even though we're letting them know that they are in the category and we're offering the vaccine through the town, they have signed up. We're not making it mandatory for anyone. It is all voluntary, and I think that everyone is making their decisions based upon what their individual needs or their individual health challenges might be. But I do want to go back just quickly to vaccine right now with the 75 plus. One of the things that we have done in Wayland is we actually have a hand sign up sheet, and we're finding that a lot of the seniors need to drive in and fill out the forms in person. And then we need to help them work through how to sign up. It's PrepMod, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah, PrepMod, and help them sign up with PrepMod. So it's been very labor intensive. And I think that as the state goes forward, I know they've set up that 211, but just looking a little bit more at how to simplify it, because not everyone is going to be able to use that and be conversant with setting up things through the internet, like appointments. And then the other thing is not everyone has transportation. And so if we're not providing the vaccine locally, transportation becomes a huge issue for those who need the vaccine. And like we're going to be going to our housing authority at some point and providing the vaccine on site at the housing authority and other places where there may be a transportation problem.
Excellent. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to go to another question. I'll turn it over to Kristen to talk about vaccines in a minute. But while I do, I'm going to throw out another loaded question for you. What we've heard a lot in folks' opening remarks, obviously municipal services is a broad category. A lot of you have been working to take municipal services from in-person, paper-based to remote, building off what Louise just mentioned about filling out forms. I'll go to Kristen next to talk about vaccines, but I'm curious to know from each of you what municipal services have been the most challenging to replicate in a virtual environment. So we'll go first to Kristen, still on the subject of vaccines.
Sure, thanks, Jason. I would say that I explained a little bit about what Shrewsbury is doing with our regional partnership with the city of Worcester. The other thing that we are doing is I've been meeting twice a week or more with our council on aging director and our emergency management director, and continue to say to them, this is our time to shine and market our council on aging and how good our council on aging is doing. Before the pandemic, we had a listing of seniors in town who either use the council on aging services or who are volunteers. And we've been proactively calling people on that list and asking them if they'd like to get a vaccine. And if we have slots available in Worcester or other areas, our COA staff and COA volunteers are actually going in the system and signing people up and putting in their information. We've Corey checked all the volunteers. We lost a lot of volunteers through this council on aging because we stopped all services. So this is really bringing back our volunteer base. And we've also, before the state came out with the 211 system, said, if you're in the eligible population, 75 plus, don't have access to a computer, we did a reverse robocall to our seniors and asked them, please call the council on aging. We're ready to receive your call. We're ready to sign you up and give you help. And our transportation system through the Worcester Regional Transit Authority and our town vans do allow us to go to Worcester and Northborough and Shrewsbury to get residents to the pharmacies or to the larger sites. Worcester is going to be opening up a mega site similar to Gillette at Worcester State University next week. So that's another opportunity that our residents will have. But we've really been trying to market our council on aging a little bit better and to reach out to people as best we can rather than having them give us a call. But again, we're seeing a lot of sons and daughters of seniors giving us a call and asking for navigation as well. In terms of your question about the services replicated, I think that we've done a pretty good job with transitioning, but it is the outreach to those seniors who can't get on a meeting to voice their opinions on either the town budget or a land use issue. They struggle with muting and unmuting on the virtual settings. They really need that hand holding and face-to-face. So I think on the other contrary side, our senior services may lack a little bit because we want to keep our seniors protected and away from the virus, but we know that they're struggling so much with isolation, missing their day-to-day routines, not being able to get out. So I would see that as one of our major struggles in town services is that senior population or the population who may not speak the various languages that we put out information on. How do we get to them to give them the information that they need?
Excellent. I see Bill's hand. Go ahead.
So similar to what Kristen just said, that our senior services have probably been one of the more difficult ones to replicate. Though I will say, though, that we have actually reopened our senior center. We did it in a very safe and socially distanced manner. We do still hold programs on a very limited basis. There's only a few folks that can attend those programs at a time, obviously. So we try and do it in a very safe way. We've also reopened our library, which A lot of places haven't done that yet either, but we did that in a very safe and safe and socially distanced way. The one area that we haven't been able to replicate is recreation. And I think generally concerning that is a program which I think is critical to the reopening efforts, particularly not only just for the parents, but for the kids themselves, because the kids have been so isolated, dealing with the way school is being handled right now. The social interaction that's not happening right now is going to have some, I think, some lasting impacts for a while. And I do think that the more we can actually do to create programs sooner rather than later, of course, safe and in a safe way, the better it will be for all of us. I know particularly parents are having a difficult time, trying to find new creative ways to keep their kids active and connected. But at the end of the day, it's that social interaction that they really need. And I know the parents need it as well. So that's the one area that we really would like to do a better job in. And right now it's been very, very difficult. And curious to see if anybody else has been having success in that area. So thank you.
And I see Louise's hand.
So we have the same issues with respect to those services and programming that is normally provided in person. And I would say the Council on Aging, Recreation, the library. And we've tried to do as much as possible remotely through Zoom. And like Bill, we have offered recreation programs. We continue to have some Council on Aging. We continue to have the library open on a more limited basis. But what we are also seeing is we've had to actually increase services, mental health services. So we've expanded what our youth and family services are providing to add increased mental health services. And we're seeing a demand in every age group. And I think that really is because of that isolation. If there's a way that we could even increase programming in some way more than just through this virtual Zoom computer, that would be hugely beneficial for the population. But we're still working on that. We're still thinking about, what is it we can do? And the cold weather is not helping.
Thank you. And we've got an audience question that I want to go to John and Acton first on, which is we've had an audience question about ideas that panelists have to support local businesses during the pandemic. And I know that the town of Acton has launched some programming to help local businesses. So John, I'm wondering if you can kick off that by telling us a little bit about what Acton has done on this issue.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we're very proud of our efforts here in Acton to try to help our businesses. We recognize that they're really, when you drive through towns, people don't remember the houses that they drove by. They remember the businesses. So if our businesses aren't here, we lose a big part of our identity. So we focused on, first thing we did was reached out to them. We were in constant communication with them anyways, trying to tell them to put tape on the floor and put plexiglass up and all the things that we were trying to make them sure that they did. But we also said, what can we do to help you? They said, geez, we get in trouble if we put a sign in our window. We get in trouble if we put signs on our parking lot. Why don't you give us a break on that stuff? So we relaxed our temporary signage bylaws and people could put signs everywhere. And just to give them an extra chance of grabbing a customer. We changed, like most towns did, with the liquor licensing laws, allowed people to do more stuff outside. A lot of our restaurants are constrained for space because they're on septic. And we kind of just figured out a way to make that work and added seating outside where they weren't normally allowed to do it. We did a takeout selfie campaign. Most restaurants were closed for, a long time. And then when they reopened, they really focused on takeout. And so we wanted to make sure that as a community, as a town, as an organization, we told the community that it's safe to get takeout, that you can go get your food and bring it home and eat it. And it's almost as fun as going to a restaurant, and you should support our businesses. So we tried to encourage people to take a selfie when they had their takeout, just to kind of give some buzz to our restaurants as part of our Acton Restaurant Week that we would normally do. Anyways, we added that component to it. We refunded liquor licenses to our restaurants because they had cash flow issues. They couldn't come up with $5,000, which it costs to keep a liquor license. So we gave them time to pay us, and we reduced it by a certain amount. We also gave out these grants to certain businesses of $4,000 to help with costs related to the pandemic. which was not as easy as it sounds. We thought we could do it with CARES money, and we ran into some pretty big obstacles doing that. So we had to change plans and go to town meeting, and the town meeting voters supported it, which was exciting. And the rest, the $4,000 helped a lot, but I think more important was the community backing the small businesses. And when they got up to the mic at town meeting to say, I'm so-and-so, I own Acton Coffee House, before they could start their remarks, they got a round of applause. So for businesses that were suffering, I think getting that support from its community, even $4,000 may not have done a lot, but I think it really was a shot in the arm. Speaking of shots, for our businesses, which I think we're trying to build on that momentum and carry it forward and continue to do more and find ways to help them.
And great. And further thoughts on local efforts to help your small business community? And I think see Kristen's hand going up.
Sure. So I know it's small, but in Shrewsbury, we struggle to find locations where food trucks can gather. And obviously in COVID, we wanted to reduce the gathering, but support our local food trucks. We have several who navigate through town as well as other communities. And the Board of Selectmen allowed for Food Truck Thursday on the town hall campus. And at first we were very, very I was nervous, to be honest. I didn't want to violate the governor's orders, the gathering orders, but the managers of the Food Truck Thursdays and the community really embraced the social distancing, the markings, and it was a great way for the community to come together and say hello from a distance. The food trucks still come every Thursday, even though we're in the middle of winter, and it's a great gathering spot. One of them serves chocolate covered strawberries, and they're going to be running a deal on Valentine's Day as well at the town hall. So that's very exciting. And we are a town who also struggled with outdoor dining. A lot of our commercial districts butt right up against residential districts. And again, it was something we never thought we'd have more outdoor dining in Shrewsbury. And it was actually very successful. Our Board of Selectmen and administrative staff came up with a wonderful process for the restaurants to follow. There was no charge to apply for the outdoor dining. We worked with our building and code enforcement officers related to that. One of the things we did not do was relax fees related to liquor licenses or permitting. We actually were never asked that. We thought about it and said, if we're not asked to be reducing fees, perhaps we shouldn't do it. If we're asked, let's totally explore it. But we didn't know how we were going to fund it. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is the municipal funding and the gaps that were caused related to COVID. A huge increase of costs related to safety protocol and whatnot. Huge reductions in tax payments and other funds. And we're really struggling to get into the municipal 22 fiscal year budget, and really struggled and cut a lot for the fiscal 21 budget. Actually didn't have our May town meeting until August. And as Louise said, it was kind of like running a rock concert. We had a tent on one of the school campuses and had seating, and had a whole sound system company come in. And luckily we were able to use CARES funding for that. But the long and short of it is that we've been working with the businesses. Our health department has really been the liaison there. But really relief has not been asked, so we haven't been giving it, and we're just trying as best we can as a municipality to continue on with our level services and see how we're going to navigate fiscal 22 with the budget constraints that we have.
And Bill, I see your hand. Go ahead.
So it was similar to what Kristen did. We did a lot with outdoor dining. In fact, Paige Duncan, our planning director, actually did a really good job of helping to coordinate that whole effort with the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board and all the various boards to make sure we could relax our guidance on our limitations on how we could actually do that. We actually allowed a lot more outdoor dining than we've ever had before, obviously, and so this really was an experiment. We actually were able to work closely with the Kraft group and Brian Early up at Patriot Place to increase more outdoor dining up there. And so what we did was the process was actually pretty simple, where a person can come in, apply, and it was handled completely administratively. The board of selectmen allowed the authority to come to the town manager to just do all the approval process. So it was a very simple process. We could actually turn around in sometimes less than 24 hours to get the process done, so that people could actually take advantage of it as soon as possible. Obviously, the weather's hurting everybody right now, and it's making it very difficult for anybody to, to utilize that. But the good news is that it looks as though the numbers are actually starting to allow us to get back into the restaurants themselves. The governor just relaxed the requirements from 25 to 40%. So I think that's good news for all of us in that regard. But the other thing that we did was to promote and this is all done through the local downtown Uptown Business Association, to call for a shop local campaign, which really helped a lot of the local businesses get back involved. And then we had different contests for people to get free, get a free a meal at a place if they shopped local and dine local. So we actually were able to help a lot of people stay afloat during this very difficult time. And we did not relax any of our fees either. We took the position that if it was a bit of a slippery slope and we didn't want to go in that direction, even though there has been some very, very limited inquiries about that, we like Shrewsbury did not experience a lot of concern over that particular issue. So that was a good thing for us, because we didn't think that would lead to in a good direction over the long term. But glad to see that it worked out the way it did. I think next year is going to be, the second half of this year is going to be a different story for all of us. And I think the next challenge is going to be, how do we reintegrate everybody into the whole process? And I think we're going to be facing that fairly soon, because I do think that the whole vaccination process is going to start leading to a much more open society again. And I think we're going to be challenged with a different set of concerns, and how we control some of the big crowds that are going to be actually going back into places. And which is good news for everybody, but certainly it's also going to create a whole new set of challenges in some other ways.
Thank you. And it's hard to believe we're actually almost at the hour mark, and we do want to keep this from not going too far past 9:30. And I know that this is a lot to talk about. So I think we'll do two questions, and we'll start with the first of the two is where Kristen had brought up the subject of municipal budget. Another loaded question from you all. I'm curious how COVID is impacting your fiscal 22 or even your fiscal 21 budget conversations, whether it's new cost centers that you didn't have to deal with before or impacting predictability. How is COVID creeping into your budget conversation? And maybe we'll go to, I see Louise's hand up.
Yes, we're right in the middle of our fiscal year 22 budget, I'm sure, like everyone else is. So I think for fiscal year 20, even though we had to shut down government and there were additional expenses, it was late enough in the year that I think many communities were able to deal with the additional expenses. Fiscal year 21, we've had CARES Act reimbursement, FEMA reimbursement. The school departments have received also their own CARES Act funding. So we in Wayland, we are seeing a deficit for the year, but it's not a deficit that is so challenging that we couldn't overcome it for fiscal year 21. It's within free cash. We can take measures to tighten expenses or tighten the expenditure. Fiscal year 22, though, is really the problem, because it's not just that we are seeing additional expenditures, we're also seeing significant loss of revenue. And it's that combination of the two that is a huge problem. Local receipts are going to be down significantly. And even though the state, I think the governor is proposing increasing local aid by a certain percentage, it is not going to make up for the loss in local receipts. And that, together with non-CARES Act, because right now we have no guarantee that there will be any additional funding for fiscal year 22, puts us in a really, really difficult position. We're looking at potentially our rainy day fund to help with next year, hoping that fiscal year 23, we will have our revenue sources restored to normal. And otherwise, we have to seriously look at some cuts if we cannot do that.
Further thoughts on FY22 budget development? I'll see John's hand. Apparently it's not an exciting topic, but I see
No,
John.
it's something that the finance committee keeps asking me about, and I keep deferring. So hopefully they're not listening. You know, we were concerned with local receipts in Acton. We have a primarily residential tax base, so a lot of the impacts we're sort of insulated from. But one area is motor vehicle excise and local receipts, and we did just do a big thing on that, and it was a little bit light, but it wasn't. We were concerned, and it didn't reach a level of concern that we thought it would. But we had been planning for contingencies, and we've had hiring freezes and spending freezes in place, and you know, I'm going to keep those in place probably for the rest of the year as we see things continue to shape up. But definitely a lot of uncertainty. I mean, one good thing is that the Federal CARES Act gave us a ton of money to pay for all the things directly related to the responses, which was the most of our focus in the last year. But yeah, 22 is going to be a new challenge, definitely.
And I see Bill's hand. Go ahead.
I'll be brief because I know I want to get a lot of my other colleagues to to speak on that issue, but we're actually in the middle of the 22 process right now, and right now we are balanced, thank God. But there were a couple of things that we didn't do this year that we didn't do last year, and that was we're not paying down our OPEB liability like we had been in the past, which was, you know, we were putting close to $1.1 million a year into that, which we stepped away from because of the fact that we know we don't have the money to do that right now. The other thing is that we are clearly impacted because, you know, there are no concerts at Gillette this year. There was no games at Gillette this year, no outdoor events. And that's a significant revenue loss to us, probably close to a couple $1 million. But we do have a guaranteed minimum that we do receive from Gillette every year. So it wasn't a complete offset, but I will say that you know, it was still down about $1.5 to $2 million in terms of actual revenue loss. That said, we were able to still balance because we had a pretty good cash reserve, free cash position. And so we were able to offset some of that loss. And I feel a little bit differently about FY22 than maybe some of you do. And that is the fact, I think FY2 is going to be a better year than we think. I pay very close attention to what the world is saying on the business front. And from what I'm seeing in the business response and what's happening in the stock market, what's going on around the entire country in terms of growth and restartups, I do think we're going to see a better year than we think. So we're not anticipating that in terms of our budget planning. We're actually taking a very conservative approach in doing that, but I do think that we're going to be a little bit surprised, at least particularly as the start of calendar year 22 starts. I think we'll start to see a lot of that business coming back.
Thank you. And keeping an eye on the clock, I want to offer a closing question that I'll go through each in turn to offer your thoughts, and I welcome you to offer any closing thoughts you have. But public communication, whether you're a town manager or leading COVID response, how have you approached the task of public communication as sort of our closing topic? Whether it's from an explicitly COVID lens, what does the public need to hear, or whether you're a municipal administrator and you've had to change the way your municipality communicates with the public, how have you handled getting information out to members of the community, and have you changed the way you've done that? As sort of as our closing thought, and we'll go in order again, and I'll start with Sergeant Burman.
I think Ashland's done a great job with that. Obviously, our webpage is updated every week or daily if need to be. Our town manager sends out a weekly newsletter out to the community. But I really, hats off also to our Council on Aging. They've been calling elders, reaching out to them, just to even talk. We've done quite a bit of communication, and I'm actually pretty proud of it. Just in my closing too, I have to tell you the one positive I think about COVID, it's really changed the way, and it's done a much better job the way we collaborate with other departments and with the communities around us, helping each other out.
Thank you for that, Sergeant. Certainly appreciate that. And we'll go next, sticking with the alphabet, back to Bill.
We've actually, when COVID first started, I actually did a daily Facebook update, Facebook Live update for the entire community, and I did that for 7 days a week for like 2 or 3 months. And then the state came out with more and more information that they were able to share on a daily basis, so I didn't have to do that as often. But it was a great way to communicate with the town, and I'll tell you, I got more feedback, positive feedback from the community on that one little thing that I did it was like a 15-minute update every day, how things were going, and people really appreciated that because they felt they can get more information about what was going on around them. And we had a local, we had a dashboard rather that provided us with all the local information about cases going on in Foxborough. So people are very interested in seeing that, and it was just an opportunity to talk about other things that were going on in town at the same time. I think like Ed Burman said in Ashland, our council on aging did a lot with getting the word out through their newsletters, et cetera. And we became much more active on social media through Twitter and Facebook, providing updates to folks as we went along on a regular basis so that we could keep people updated along the way. And that really, I think that's really been a significant step forward for us as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Kristen.
Sure, thank you. So I think the town of Shrewsbury was late to the Facebook game. I think we had our first Facebook page March or April of 2019. So luckily we had that up and we could issue some alerts. We also have a communication specialist that works in the town manager's office, and she set up a COVID alerts on our website so people could sign up for special alerts. We do have a code red system in town, and we reserve that for emergencies only. So we've really been leery about using code red for COVID type issues. We generally use it if there's a trash delay or if there's some public emergency in town. So keeping mindful of when and when not to use the code red. Similar to Ashland and Foxborough, our Council on Aging staff and volunteers have just called seniors and chat 15, 20 minutes. How is your day? And some seniors really like the call every single day. Just keeps them really connected. We have a great relationship with our media connection. So Shrewsbury Media Connection runs our cable services, and they actually started a cooking show. So Shrewsbury residents and employees were allowed to submit cooking videos, and they would stream those on the YouTube and TV. I actually put forward a cooking video that was pretty exciting. So, just those fun, new, innovative things. The town manager does a weekly show called Ask the Manager that continued. And I think we can always do better in forms of communication. Just understanding what populations we're not getting to and who needs our services, I think, is the biggest challenge. But hopefully we're going to see the bright side soon and continue on with these really great, innovative things that we've been forced to go into and make them even better over time.
Thank you. We'll go next to John.
Thank you. Yeah, we in Acton, we've done a lot of the similar things. We have a weekly show, and I mentioned the radio station earlier, a lot of outreach with seniors, especially those aren't that good with the internet, very aggressive with social media, public relations. One thing that happened last week actually was we had a very successful clinic. We vaccinated 100 and some odd seniors at the Housing Authority and a few homebound people. And we didn't do anything. We didn't do a press release or anything like that. And I started getting hammered with emails over the weekend. How come Acton's not doing anything for vaccinations? And it made me realize, and I talked to staff about it on Mondays, that we do a lot of good work every day anyways, but if we're not actively telling people what we're doing, they don't know, because it's so hard to get information about your local government. So that's one thing that I've learned, is that we've been pushing stuff out every day, social media, press releases, everything, just so people know that we're doing our best to help them. And it also creates more support for things that we're trying to do going forward.
Thank you, John. And Louise in Wayland.
So we're still a pretty old-fashioned town in terms of communication. We didn't have a Facebook page until after COVID started. We now have one. I don't think it's very active. We primarily communicated through our website. We did set up, it took us a little while, a COVID page on our website, and reverse 911, regular mailings, mailing through Council on Aging newsletter, mailing in the tax inserts, postcard. We need to probably come into the more modern age, but it's been difficult because we just are not set up that way right now.
So with that, I want to, on behalf of the 495 MetroWest Partnership, thank our panelists for participating this morning. I think that the idea of getting 5 municipal leaders together to talk about COVID response in an hour was ambitious, but I think this was a really insightful conversation. So personally, I want to thank you on behalf of the partnership, and I'll turn things over to Beth Wierling from our Energy and Sustainable Development Committee just for some closing words.
Sure. Thank you to our audience members for their thoughtful questions. To our panelists today, reminding folks to sign up for the partnership's email newsletter to watch for upcoming meetings and event announcements. And, like Jason said, thank you to our panelists for your participation today. This is certainly a challenging time in so many ways, and hearing how you and staff members have continued to support and assist your communities throughout the pandemic is certainly appreciated. If we were live in person, I'd ask everyone to give you a round of applause, because it really is a very challenging time and you've really gone out of your way to support your communities. So thank you very much.
And thank you, everyone. And that'll wrap us for this morning. And the recording of today's session will be broadcast on the partnership's YouTube and social media later today. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.